That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, Volume 18. Prologue, The Clandestine Meeting. As Rimuru and his allies were engaged in blistering combat with the forces of Ludora, there was an uninvited guest in the former beast kingdom of Eurasania. Here a mighty edifice named the Sky Palace was in the midst of being built by a remarkably diverse team of magic-born. With the Eastern Empire kicking off their invasion of the Forest of Jura, Geld, the chief foreman, had to step away from construction duty. This meant major delays in the project, but work was still proceeding as normal on sections the remaining crew could handle by themselves. Such was the scene that greeted Obila of the three mystic leaders when she arrived. On the topmost floor of the Sky Palace, a space serving as a provisional office, Milim and Obila were facing each other. The only other person in the room was Midray, politely standing behind Milim's back. Everyone else had taken refuge. If a fight broke out, none of them could contribute much. Milim had seen Carillion and Freyoff earlier, but she herself wasn't taking part in the war. There were several reasons for this, but the biggest one was that somebody needed to defend her nation. Looking at things from the Empire's perspective, she couldn't deny the possibility that they'd opt for an invasion route through the lands she ruled over. What's more, if she took the lead on any warfare, it'd mean having to kill human beings by her own hand, something she was loath to do. So she stayed here, and it was now increasingly clear that was the right choice. "What do you need from me?" she asked her visitor, someone rude enough to pick this exact moment for her visit. Midray, perhaps driven by his absolute faith in Milim, stood silently as he watched on, waiting to see how Obila would respond to her question. Obila, meanwhile, removed the god-class armor covering her entire body and kneeled before Milim. "I am extremely delighted to have this audience with you, Dragon Princess Milim. My name is Obila, a former member of the 7 primordial angels and the faithful servant of Veldenava the Star King Dragon." She had beautiful, flowing hair as dark as the night sky. The star-like shine to her eyes was just as mesmerizing, holding enough charm to capture the mind of anyone who beheld them. Milim was all geared up for a fight, but seeing Obila's unexpectedly obsequious manner disappointed her a bit. As she stood there, unsure how to react, she sensed a smile on Obila's face. "I can understand if you do not know of me," Obila went on. "At the time you were born, I was assigned to a job over in another world. I apologize for not coming to introduce myself sooner." "What's going on here?" Milim was doubtful about all this. "Well, you look pretty strong. But you're not here to duke it out with me?" "Oh, absolutely not." "Huh. So what are you here for?" "To give you my formal greetings, and a word of warning." Obila raised her head, her expression suddenly stern as she stared at Milim. They moved the conversation into a temporary reception room. After another greeting, Obila gave Milim a detailed account of current happenings. Hearing that Veilgrind the Flame Dragon, her aunt, had fallen into the hands of Feldway made Milim want to fly off to assist Rimuru that very moment, but Obila warned against it, stating that any attempt at this point would come far too late. "What are you talking about? At this rate, my top pal Rimuru's gonna be..." "I am telling you, it is too late now." Obila's response had Milim livid. "Then why didn't you come to me sooner?" "I'm afraid I have no excuse, Lady Milim." Obila bowed her head at the fuming Milim, too polite to explain away her behavior. She was a servant of the mystic Lord Feldway, and right now she was under orders to defend his mystic palace. Going off to meet with Milim was a serious dereliction of duty, and she could have said as much, but no, Obila was simply ashamed of herself for failing to live up to Milim's expectations. Seeing that, Milim was forced to calm herself down. "All right. Perhaps that was asking too much. I appreciate you telling me, at least." "It is a great relief to hear those words from you," Obila said, bowing her head in reverence. There was no sign that she was lying. Milim had a knack for reading the subtle signs people gave out, and looking at Obila, she decided she was acting out of pure sincerity. "Rimuru may not look it, but he's a pretty cautious guy," Milim told her. "I firmly believe he can make it through anything that comes his way, no matter what. That's how much I trust him." Yes, indeed. So if you claim not to be my enemy, you'd better not lay a hand on him. I would like to offer you my promise on that front, but I'm afraid I am not in a position to act in public. For now, I believe it best to act only when I have Feldway's trust in the matter, but what do you say to that? If Feldway ordered Obila to do something, she intended to obey. But as she was not so subtly hinting, she was leaving the option of severing ties with Feldway on the table. The stars in her eyes shone around her night sky hair. You don't seem to be lying, Milim said. It is all the truth, I assure you, based on my own feelings. Let me ask you, then, what are your goals? Feldway, Obila replied without a moment of wavering, seems intent on trying to revive Lord Veldenava, but I feel this behavior is both arrogant and quite out of line. Your divine father, after all, will surely revive himself at some point without anyone else's assistance. If this resurrection is not so easily forthcoming, there must be a reason for it, and someone like me is hardly in a position to guess at the will of such divinity. In summation, instead of trying to resurrect Veldenava, Obila believed that Milim, his own daughter, should be their right and exalted master. So you'll be my ally, someone as infinitely small as I would never dream of having such conceited thoughts. I have nothing I wish to take from you, merely being of service would be an indescribable joy to me. Please, give me your direction. It was all up to Milim. That was what Obila truly wanted. And Milim understood that, but something about Obila's sheer resolve bothered her. All right. You're not afraid to betray Feldway, then? I think there is a difference in perspectives at play here. If anything, one could say that it is Feldway who's defying the will of Lord Veldenava. There was not the slightest sign of indecision in Obila's voice, proving once again that she meant every word. I believe that Lord Veldenava's will is more interested in the happiness of you, his daughter. I am firm in that belief, and thus I have no pity for those who may attempt to obstruct you. This was about much more than betraying anyone. Obila thought that Feldway's behavior would cause harm to Milim, and whether she worked for him or not, she was nothing but an enemy to him. But Obila was smart, too. She wasn't acting entirely on her own decisions, she was ready to leave all of that to Milim, and she was taking great pains to ensure none of what she did got in Milim's way. That was why she was taking such a great risk just to meet with her. If Milim didn't want her to do anything, she wouldn't. If she gave her the order, though, Obila would strike hard against anybody out there. Such was the will of the former mystic leader, and Milim wasn't blind to it. Very well. In that case, I'll add you to my team. Any objections, Midray? Of course not, Lady Milim. I would never have anything to object about. Good. Obila, from this day on, you're on my side. They're not here right now, but once the war is over, I'll introduce you to Carillion and Frey. Thank you. Wah ha 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 ha. Now I've got my own big four, counting Midray as the leader. Can't wait to brag about this to Rimuru. Milim laughed heartily to herself. She had always been secretly jealous of Rimuru's big four, and now she could call her own underlings something similar. If Frey were here, she'd almost certainly stop this nonsense in its tracks, but, fortunately for Milim, only Midray was around at the moment. I'm the leader? Well, I suppose I am, yes. You won't find anyone out there who knows as much about you as me, Lady Milim, he said. Milim already meant everything to Midray, but now that she gave him the title of Big Four leader, he wouldn't dream of objecting to it. In fact, he gleefully agreed to the idea. Now there was a rival Big Four in town. Despite being named part of the Big Four, Obila accepted the news without any major agitation. Milim's words, as far as Obila was concerned, were the will of God, and thus she made Milim her first priority at all times. But this also led to a thorny problem. So, with that in mind, the question becomes what we'll do with Obila, Milim said to Midray. This is exactly the kind of time when I'd want to talk things over with Rimuru. Indeed, a tough issue. Should we leave her here, or have her retain her position and serve as a spy for us? Both had their pluses and minuses. They really needed to devote serious thought to it, taking in feedback from Carillion and Frey, and Rimuru, too, if it was possible. But what do you want to do, Obila? Midray, never exactly intellectual in nature, wasn't suited for this kind of discussion. Milim knew that well, so she just asked Obila directly instead of going through him. Personally, Obila replied in her clear voice, I wish to return to the Mystic Palace one more time. I have not manifested my true body here right now, so remaining here would require moving my physical form over, which would be a challenge. Also, Obila's job was to take care of the cryptids in their own world, or, really, her biggest task was keeping tabs on Avalij, the world destroyer dragon. Cornu was heading their invasion efforts into other dimensions, and Zorario was involved with handling the insectors. With a pact now in place between the Mystic Lord Feldway and the Insect Lord Xeranus, Zorario had a lot more freedom of movement, but any type of communication with Avalij was a difficult task, which meant Obila's main physical body was somewhat bound in place by her duties. The Insect Lord and the World Destroyer Dragon? Wow. They sound strong. They are. Xeranus I cannot comment on, but Avalij is quite a menace. Call it a living desire to destroy all worlds. Attempting to live alongside it is impossible. It had been allowed to keep existing by Lord Veldenava, but only if it is sealed away in the world it is in now. Any attempt to release it must be stopped at once. If Obila stayed here with Milim, she wouldn't be able to keep as close an eye on Avalij. Her hope was to watch over Avalij to the end, so it wouldn't have any impact on Feldway's plans. I see, said Milim. I guess you better keep watching it, then. As you wish. But now this talk is making me wonder just what Feldway wants to do with Avalij, you know. I was wondering the same thing, said Midray. The question was understandable. Neither of them knew of Feldway's plans. So Obila decided to divulge everything she knew. Feldway, you see, was given the duty to monitor Avalij from Lord Veldenava himself. However, he intends to abandon that duty and prioritize Lord Veldenava's resurrection instead. He has built an underworld gate to that effect and is currently trying to expand it to the needed size. Once complete, he plans to send all the mystics and insectors over to this key world in order to stage an invasion. Expanding an underworld gate? That's gonna be a long time coming. Indeed. But what's he gonna do after that? If he doesn't close that gate after opening it, won't it release Avalij as well? That is certainly a possibility, and I have informed Feldway of it. But he was not at all concerned. Honestly, I have no idea what he is thinking. Feldway, I fear, has gone insane. All he cares about is reviving Lord Veldenava. I'm almost convinced he doesn't care if he destroys the entire world in the process. Feldway hated this world, the one that took Veldenava from him. He intended to create a brand new one, filled solely with his hand-picked inhabitants, and if Avalij was capable of destroying worlds, well, that worked for him. Great. So when that happens, it's us who's gonna have to deal with it, huh? What a tremendous hassle. Xeranus sounds like enough trouble alone, too. Why can't they just stay sealed away over in that other world? Milim and Midray scowled at each other. She had a standing invite to go hang out with Rimuru and his friends, but that got delayed due to the war. As if that wasn't distressing enough, now there was this problem. Milim was getting more miffed by the millisecond. At this rate, the only solution is to go up to Feldway and kick his butt. So came Milim's overly simplistic solution. Quite true, Lady Milim. And as the head of your Big Four, I am ready to receive your orders and dispatch Feldway at once. Milim meant everything to Midray. He enthusiastically agreed with her, not bothering to think anything over first. Great. Glad I can rely on you, Midray. I'll join you as Supreme Commander, too. We need to crush this Feldway guy's ambitions, and soon. Yes, my lady. I'm so excited, my muscles are tingling already. You will have a remarkable sight once I'm on the battlefield. Without Frey around, there was nobody to stop the pair from going off the rails. But Obila still saw fit to speak up. One moment, please. I have been sharing information with Feldway and his team since the start of this operation, but from what I know, the Emperor Ludora had taken Lady Veilgrin's draconic factors and made them his own. However, at the last minute, the demon Lord Raimuru intervened. A final confrontation is still in the cards for later. She stated this strictly to calm Milim. So Raimuru's all right, then? He is. The operation is currently at a standstill, and Feldway has reportedly retreated back to his home base. So taking action now would be too hasty, yeah. I hate to say it, Midray, but you're right. Midray and Milim settled back down, their momentum gone. They now had a comfortable amount of time before Feldway tackled his next plan. Instead of flying into action immediately, it was best to wait so they could fight alongside Raimuru's forces. What mattered most of all right now was exchanging information, and Milim was sensible enough to see that. So, Obila, I want you to look into Feldway's movements until you receive further orders from me. As you wish, my lady. Use magical calls to contact me, all right? Very well. Milim and Obila agreed to a wavelength only they would be able to communicate over. Crossing dimensions required a vast amount of magical force, but that was no problem for someone at their level. Once all the related business was taken care of, the meeting came to its natural end. In that case, I will take my leave for now. With a final goodbye, Obila set off. And as Milim and Midray considered the potential chaos to come, they could already feel a headache making itself known. Chapter 1, The Walpurgis Council. Rain's transport gate led me to a world of white and silver. Snow was raging across the landscape. Apparently we were holding it in Guy's castle's stronghold this time, not the space from before. I set foot inside, guided by Rain, with Shion and Diablo behind me. The outside was frozen and completely inhospitable for any kind of life, but it was a comfortable temperature inside the castle. A good half of the castle was in a state of collapse, however, and it was clear to anyone what had happened here. "Hey," Guy said once I was taken to him. "Nice to see you here. Milim and Dagrel should be coming pretty soon, so relax while you wait." We were in a large meeting hall, big enough for a royal ball, and there were several circular tea tables placed in the middle. Chairs were dotted here and there, his way of encouraging us to just sit wherever. I scanned the room for other guests. Luminous and Leon had already arrived, the former accompanied by the Holy Emperor Louis and her old butler Gunther, and the latter by the two knights Arlos and Claude, both clad in full armor. Seeing some familiar faces was a relief to me. Giving them a nod, I decided to claim a seat for now. I could sense Shion and Diablo standing behind me, there'd be no sitting for them. I really wished they'd lay off with the formality, but I just let them have their way. Then Ramirez showed up, as loudly as usual. "I can't believe this. Why'd you just leave me behind like that?" "Oops. I thought we had left together, but I guess I went off without her." "Oh? Why weren't you with us, Lady Ramirez?" It was Rain, not me, showing concern about this. She must have assumed everyone was there, so seeing an annoyed Ramirez surprised her. "That's a very uncharacteristic mistake, Rain. Lady Ramirez sent us an emergency request, so I had to come over to greet her." This was my Zeri, looking just as battered and beaten as Rain but still keeping that tight glare on her face. I assumed she and Rain were pretty much the same, but they had both been put through the ringer, so now their personality differences were much more distinct. "Wow, Rain. I guess your injuries are making your mind wander a little, aren't they?" And here I was pondering over who I should bring here. But no. That prompt made me realize Ramirez had brought two people with her, Beretta and, whoa. Come on. "What are you doing here, Veldora?" I demanded. Luminous pointed her eyes behind Ramirez. Confirming that Veldora was there, she clicked her tongue and winced. "That evil dragon. Qua ha ha ha. If a meeting this important is taking place, how could I ever not participate in it? I was intending to accompany Raimuru here, actually, but I started off a little late, you see. So I stopped Ramirez real quick and asked her to bring me along instead. Veldora never did know how to read a room. Luminous's suddenly dour mood didn't even register with him as he leaned back in his chair, supremely confident. Right, exactly. Ramirez added. And if my master's joining in, I couldn't ask for much better than that, so you better thank me for thinking to bring him. Among them, only Beretta was shaking his head and groaning, but I guess he didn't have the power to stop them. I am deeply sorry, a distressed Rain said. I'm making so many careless mistakes. Nah, it's not your fault, Lady Rain, I replied, trying to assuage her. We were all kind of in a hurry on the way here. Well, I'd hope you were in a hurry, Rimuru. I'm the one who called you over, after all. And didn't I tell you before that just Rain is fine? Oops again. I forgot. Sir Guy is right, Sir Rimuru. My name alone will suffice. Yes, exactly. I feel we are on friendlier terms that way. Guess Misery understood my philosophy pretty well. I refer to people in polite terms for one of two reasons: to acknowledge their superiority, or to try to keep my distance. If I drop the titles with someone I'm not close to or am wary of, it just seems rude to me. Maybe I just don't want to be hated, either, or act hostile for no reason. On the other hand, I drop all the formalities once I'm on friendly terms with someone. Sometimes I still keep it a little formal with people like Haruna or Thraney. It's not something I can really explain, but either way, they're exceptions to the rule. But regardless of what was on my mind, I was snapped out of it by two surprising voices. You stopped calling me lady quite a long time ago, didn't you, Rimuru? He sure did. We all know that's how shameless you are, so there's no need to keep up appearances now. It was Luminous and Leon. They had a good point, enough to convince me, anyway. All right. I'll keep up that gesture then, with every intention of kindness, of course. No point quibbling over it. Misery and Rain were already gone, setting off to guide Milim and Dagrel over. Meanwhile, I kicked back and relaxed. There were snacks on the tables, so I reached out for some to pass the time. After a little while. What's the meaning of this, Guy? I'm busy with all sorts of things right now, you know. You can call for me all you want, but at least give me some advance warning. Frey called it a huge breach of manners, too. Milim arrived, as full of spunk as usual. Loud as usual, too, but that was just her being her. Is that true, Frey? Well, yes, Sir Guy. Frey, I was just telling Rimuru that there's no need for honorifics here. That includes you, Carillion, and all of you there, too. Everyone present has earned that much. Wasn't expecting that from Guy, but he had me convinced. Only the strongest of the strong were in this room. In terms of magicule stats, Leon's attendants didn't quite make the grade, but they probably had talents of their own. Frey, for that matter, had awakened to a true demon lord, putting her safely in the million class. Exactly how strong she was remained unknown, but nobody was about to look at her as a mere servant. Well, thank you. Frey nodded, seemingly aware of this as she looked around the room. I will do just that, then. I was never good at that stuff anyway, Carillion said to Guy with a dignified air, so I appreciate the thought. So, Guy, what made you call us all over here? He, too, was part of the million class alongside Frey. He'd always had the air of royalty for as long as I'd known him, so nobody was going to rap him for being arrogant. Besides, he waved at me when we made eye contact earlier. But Guy snickered at Carillion. Hold your horses. Dagrel will be coming shortly, so we'll save it for then. This is quite a surprise, though. Carillion I expected, but you've awakened, too, Frey? Yeah, of course he'd notice. I only found out after we received the report, but now that I was seeing her in the flesh, her newfound strength made her seem like a wholly different person. Yes, thank you. Perhaps it was all part of Milim's plan, but in this most recent war, I've successfully transcended my limits as a harpy. Frey smiled. Fine news, a satisfied Guy replied. Yeah, well, it was kinda the same way for me, Carillion added with a hearty laugh. I helped us lycanthropes put all the shame behind us, too. Sometimes playing along with Milim's schemes actually turns out all right, huh? Huh? What schemes? I don't know what you're talking about. Hair. Don't bother hiding it, Milim, Guy scoffed. You must have figured we'd die in some battle to come if we both remained a couple of wimps, right? That's the whole reason why you gave us a chance to fight humans. Precisely, Frey agreed. It's a chance we'll lose, besides, if the world turns out the way Sir Rimuru would like it. This might be our final opportunity, for all I know. No doubt about it. Are we right, Herm? Well, I don't know anything about that stuff. Quit your yappin' and just take your seats. Milim was practically screaming at them, her classic way of hiding her embarrassment. So that's what her aim was? Made sense. But anyway. Miss Frey, given what we just talked about, you can skip the sir with me. I wanted to point that out when I had the opportunity. But Frey just sniffed at me. Denied. You are the friend of our Master Milim. I need to pay you the proper respect. But you called her Milim in that same sentence just now. I'm not at all convinced about any of this. If you're going to bring that up. Also, if you're going to be that way, can you drop that Miss stuff? She beat me to the punch. Her request was kind of a tall order for me. Carillion was one thing, but I hated to call Frey straight up Frey. She had this kind of aura I struggled with. You know? Whenever I dealt with a beautiful woman like this, I couldn't help but shrivel up. Milim was a little girl and Lumina still looked pretty young, too, so they were okay. If they acted more like adults, though, I'd be wavering a lot. Someone as asinine as Shion, on the other hand. Way easier to deal with. Ah ha ha ha. Don't tell me you don't know how to act around grown women, Rimuru. He saw through me? Hey, don't worry about it. Next time I ask ya for something, I'll show up as a lady bombshell for ya. Ignoring Guy's advice, I went ahead and said what I really felt. I don't need that, thank you. You're not exactly doing me a favor if I know it's you inside anyway. I guess the resentment building up inside made me forget about my nerves. Hee. Of course. Besides, Sir Rimuru has a beautiful secretary, me. Why is Shion herself saying that? Hair. The likes of you, Guy, trying to entice Sir Rimuru with romance, how ruthlessly narcissistic. I could learn how to transform into a woman easily as well. If Sir Rimuru wished for it. I don't, so let's drop this, okay? Diablo was even more worrying than Shion. Let them be, and they'd start running in all these crazy directions, so I hurriedly put an end to the conversation. My staff was so hard to wrangle sometimes. I began to regret not bringing Benimaru along a little. As we engaged in this friendly bickering, Dagral arrived. He came alone, but even by himself, he dominated the room. Whoa, this place is lookin' awful. It's that kind of meeting this time, huh? That was how he chose to greet everyone before thunking down on the large chair Rain showed him. It was a heavy one, made of thick stone slabs, but I thought I could almost see it sag under his weight. Hilarious, so he's the one bringing up what everyone else politely avoided mentioning up to now, huh? I mean, we all knew it anyway. It was sorta clear from the large cracks running across the walls of this reception hall. That alone made it pretty obvious that something happened here. Something big and serious enough that we all avoided bringing it up so we could avert our eyes from reality. It was a kind of escape, a desire not to be involved, except now that we were all present, we didn't have much choice but to get down to business. Yeah, Guy said with a nod, we've got a couple of thorny issues on our plate. This time, at least, I really do want some feedback from you all. Wow. If you're going that far, it must really be serious. Dagral sounded quieter now. He must have gotten the picture, this truly was going to be a pain in the ass. I stared into the space in front of me, as did quite a few others. He'd probably want a lot more than feedback, no doubt. Then Guy stood up with a smile. Right. Time for a change of scenery. Let's kick this off with a high-level meeting solely between members of the Octagram. We get along so well with each other, after all. We do. I almost whispered "save that crap for someone else" to myself. That smile foretold all kinds of doom to me, but, sadly, I don't think I had any right to say no to him, so we all reluctantly let Guy guide us out. This space, featuring a large, round table, was cut off from the outside world. There were already drinks set in place for us. I really had to hand it to his staff. Guy was sitting in his ornate leader's chair with me opposite him. From my seat, Milliam was on the right side of Guy, Ramirez on his left. Leon was adjacent to me on the right, with Luminous between him and Milliam, and Dagrel on the opposite side. Ramirez had this teensy little chair set up on a pedestal a fair bit higher than the table, while Dagrel had a seat several times heavier looking than all the others, so you could say the seating arrangement was pretty well balanced, at least. Once we were all seated, the first thing we noticed was the empty chair between me and Dagrel. By the way, I don't see Dino among us. We don't have to wait for him. It was once again Dagrel saying what we were all thinking. The other demon lords looked concerned about this as well, their eyes settling upon Guy. Yeah, about that. Guy looked at me. I had a feeling I was already being targeted for something. Rimuru. Guess Guy found out about Dino's treachery. I didn't know what kind of intelligence network Guy had, but if he was steering this conversation in my direction, he must have known at least some of the details. Okay, you want me to explain why? Well, it's because Dino's a traitor. End of story, I said. No, it's not. We need some more thorough details. Tisk. Oh, all right. No point trying to resist him any further. Giving up, I decided to relate the whole story. Dino, now a resident of my nation, had turned traitor and switched sides in this conflict, but it wasn't anything he volunteered for. I had a good hunch that he was being influenced by Ultimate Dominion, one of Michael's skills. This I revealed to everyone, leaving out nothing. So Dino's gone to the other side, Dagrel muttered once I was done. They had been good friends, and I was sure he had his thoughts about this. I think it's more that he had his mind taken over, I explained. I didn't get to ask him how he saw all this, but... Michael was his name, you said? Guy chimed in. Are you claiming that a skill has obtained some kind of self-awareness, like a regular person? So Guy didn't know why Dino did what he did? I suppose I am, yes. There's no doubt in my mind about that. The signs of sentience are there even as we speak. It's taken over Ludora's body, so now it's functioning as Michael in real life. I mean, I've got Seal in my life, after all. There's a litany of evidence for this. Wait, Rimuru. You're saying that this ultimate dominion could affect angelic powers? Terms like angelic and demonic are quite vague concepts. How are you categorizing these? Yow. Sharp observation from Luminous there. I wasn't all too clear on that either, but then Guy stood up. I can explain. He then went into a surprisingly detailed lecture about skills. They were one of the great secrets of the world, apparently, closely intertwined with how the world itself worked. However, he left nothing to the imagination in his explanation. In essence, the laws governing this world were originally crafted by Veldenava, but these laws could be influenced and affected by those with administrative power over them. Even if you didn't have that, however, you could make a request in your mind, instill it into your magicules, and that would rewrite the laws of the world to some extent as well. That was the basic concept behind magic, which was a type of ability. Skills, the way Guy put it, were a kind of systemized approach to influencing and altering these laws. These skills resided in the souls of sentient beings, triggered by the pure energy housed inside them. That included, of course, the angelic ultimate skills crafted by Veldenava, and among these were 7 abilities known as virtue-based skills. When I fought Veldenava, he tapped into a vast arsenal of abilities, Guy continued, but once the world reached a more stable point, the only one he kept around was Michael, the strongest. Some of the others he gave away, the rest he released into the world at large. As a result, these abilities were claimed by the cycle of death and resurrection, appearing from time to time within the souls of those strong enough, and qualified enough, to house them. Some of them, of course, received a demotion and became merely unique skills, as they were too strong in their original ultimate form. Sometimes they'd become angelic uniques, even, spreading around the world but still retaining some of their powers. I had a feeling these virtue-type skills were a kind of yin to the yang of sin-based skills. Virtue and sin, angelic and demonic. That kind of thing. The way Guy was talking, though, I wasn't so sure there were still 7 virtue-based ultimate skills going around. My Raphael skill was evolved from Great Sage, for example, and I don't think that was a virtue-based thing. I wasn't smart enough to see anything wrong with Guy's explanation, but once again, Luminous had some questions, refusing to allow anything to go unexamined. Guy, if you know this, I want you to tell us, are there really 7 of these angelic skills in all? And what sort of abilities do they have? I was wondering about that too, actually, and I guess the other demon lords were as well. Heh. You guys are ganging up on me more than ever before, huh? All right, I'll tell you. First, the 7 virtue-based skills. Guy knew a whole lot about them, these 7 skills once possessed by Veldenava. According to him, they were, Michael, Lord of Justice, ultimate skill, the most powerful of abilities, best suited for a commander role. Your orders become the dominating impulses within your target's minds, and you enjoy literal absolute defense, like having castle guard around you at all times. Raphael, Lord of Wisdom, ultimate skill, a support-oriented ability suited for administrating the laws governing the world. Uriel, Lord of Vows, ultimate skill, an ability suited for overseeing physical spaces, providing the user governance over all physical phenomena. Sariel, Lord of Hope, ultimate skill, an ability meant for managing the origins of life and the cycle of resurrection. Metatron, Lord of Purity, ultimate skill, an ability that sorts through the chaotic mix of all laws combined, preventing interference. Works at the level of pure energy. Raguel, Lord of Relief, ultimate skill, an ability that supports and provides amplification for the needs of others. Given to Veilgrind. Gabriel, Lord of Endurance, ultimate skill, an ability meant to lock conditions in place and deal with unexpected events. Given to Velzard. That sort of thing? Honestly, he knew way the hell more than I thought he did about them, but I kept my surprise hidden from him. So that's how these abilities add up, but as of this moment, we've only verified the presence of 3 of them. Veldenava gave his skill Michael to Ludora, and in turn, he took Uriel back for his own purposes. That's something Ludora acquired and made into an ultimate, you see. I'm not sure, but chances are some changes occurred to that skill in the process. Either way, it's been lost now, so there's no way to confirm anything. Guy paused. No one interrupted him. Now, I knew that the Michael skill given to Ludora has the power to make anyone do your bidding. But it turns out this is far more powerful than I originally gave it credit for. He suddenly grew hesitant. I waited for him to continue, and then our eyes met. You know what I mean, don't you, Rimuru? Well, no reason to lie, I guess. I wanted to pretend I knew nothing, if I could, but that wasn't gonna happen. I didn't get to talk fully about Ultimate Dominion before, so it was time to lay out my perspective on this. With the problem growing to the point it'd cause more harm than good to avoid the subject. Yeah. Well, not know so much as, I was fighting against it just the other day. When Veldora got taken over by the enemy, I thought for sure that was the end. Veilgrind got ruled over, too, after all. You did? I went through a lot, in fact, thanks to you pushing this trouble on me. It wasn't just a duel against Ludora, it was all-out war. I went ahead and said what needed to be said. But it wasn't like Guy actually cared. Ah ha ha ha. What's the big deal? You won, he told me. It's a huge deal. Veilgrind destroyed Ramiriz's labyrinth. The land around our town is a burned-out hellscape. And, yeah, the rebuilding process is going along great, but this is the last time I ever do any favors for you, okay? I could feel my momentum picking up. I really didn't want him making any more impossible requests, for a little bit, at least. PFFT. A little of your magic, and you could clean that whole mess up in 2 minutes. But fine. So what's your conclusion? Gaia asked me. Well, I vaguely talked about how it could influence people before, but let me be a little more honest about it. Michael's ultimate dominion is a menace of an ability. It gives the user complete control over anyone or anything that possesses an angelic ultimate skill. No. I find that hard to believe, said Luminous. Whether man or monster, those who wield an ultimate skill have a powerful, well-honed mentality. How could anyone take over someone like that? They can. How else to explain why Veilgrind, too, was dominated by Michael, and not just Veldora? I never would have believed a spiritual life form could be taken over like that, either, until I saw it for myself. In fact, I still didn't want to believe it. It was the stuff of nightmares, something I never wanted to experience again. Well, Raimuru's telling the truth, guys. Veilgrind possessed the skill Raguel, and like I just said, Velzard has the skill Gabriel, Guy told everyone. And there you go. I was wondering if that was the case, actually. Judging by how trashed Guy's stronghold was, he must have been fighting against someone crazy powerful. I hated to admit it, but Velzard must have really been under Michael's control. My worst premonition had come true, which did nothing but depress me. Whoa. Guy, are you saying that Lady Velzard's on the enemy's side? That's right, Dagrel. You're kidding me. That's dreadful news, isn't it? The confirmation from Guy clearly disturbed Dagrel. They had been acquainted for a long, long time, and he knew full well just how dangerous Velzard could be. I personally didn't know as much about her. I understood she'd probably be a handful, but I couldn't be sure just what kind of a threat she was. Thanks to that, it didn't quite seem real to me. Just for safety's sake, I want to ask, she hasn't been maybe defeated or put in a cage somewhere yet, has she? Rimuru, said Guy, do you think life would be that easy for us? Guess not. A pity my hopeful expectations didn't play out. I hated to have Guy act all exasperated at me, too. Well, this couldn't get much worse, could it? Now even Velzard is on Michael's side. I couldn't help but say that out loud, although I knew I was talking on behalf of everyone else. You've got that right. Leon sounded troubled over it, too. I had my doubts whether that was true, but this is certainly no laughing matter any longer. Luminous had a dark look on her face. I could see why. This was Guy we were talking about, and even he let her get away without concluding the fight. All of us very much doubted that we'd do any better against her. No need to worry. There are still 7 points left on this octagram, and the rest of us are pretty darn strong, too, right? Let's kick some ass and show them just what we're made of. Why does only Milim seem glad about all this? Something in the blood of a true dragon must affect you mentally or something. So now we knew things couldn't get much worse, but that wasn't even the end of the bad news. Continuing with my answer to your question, are there really 7 angelic-type ultimate skills in total? The answer to that is no, said Guy. Most unfortunate. Luminous seemed less than cheerful about it. So you really don't have any idea how many of those there are? Dagrel asked. I don't know all of them, Guy gravely replied. When I fought Veldinava, he didn't show me every single thing in his arsenal. When I speak of 7 virtue-based skills, I am taking him at his word. Beyond that, he said he'd give one special ability to each of the 7 primordial angels. Or intended to. The hall fell into silence. First the 7 virtue-based skills, and now 7 others he gave to those angels. That meant 14 in total? You're hinting that he didn't manage to? That's right, Dagrel, Guy replied. The angels of the time didn't have much in the way of self-awareness yet. Some of them lacked the ability to handle an ultimate skill. That's why Veldinava gave Velzard and Veilgrind Gabriel and Raguel, respectively. He did also give skills to the angels that qualified for them, but anything he couldn't give out, he let loose on the world instead. All Veldenava kept was Michael, which he later traded for the Uriel skill Ludora obtained. Then, when the dragon died, Uriel was lost as well, only to become my own ability, much later on, merged with Vielgrin's Cthugha, Lord of the Fire God. You could really sense the history behind all this, but this wasn't the time to turn my eyes away from reality. It really felt like I'd better keep that tidbit a secret. Still, we now had a better grasp of the whole situation. So these angelic skills are just that, pure skills, crafted by Veldenava himself, and there are likely at least 14 of them floating around. And anyone who manifests and acquires one of these skills is completely unable to resist Michael's ultimate dominion? I asked. That'd be the case, yes. Guy nodded at me. And that begged the next question. Hold on. Enough about angelic skills, what about the demonic ones, then? Whoops, Ramirez was kind enough to ask what I meant to ask. Everyone's eyes focused on Guy. That's a tougher question to answer, but hear me out. When I was defeated by Veldenava, I acquired the unique skill Pride. That was thanks to me observing him and trying to imitate his strength. I think there's a secret lurking around that. What do you mean? Ramirez, your skill was something you were born with, right? So maybe it doesn't feel too real to you, but acquiring a skill has a lot to do with what exactly you're wishing for. It varies from person to person, but still. Guy then gave us a quick recap on the nature of skills. Skills generally reside in either the material, spiritual, or astral body, the three things that make up a physical creature. However, certain special skills instead take up residence in the soul itself. These are usually quite strong skills, as one's biggest desires are naturally going to be those nearest and dearest to their heart. I combined this thought with Seal's own opinion. Certainly, there were some unique skills that resided in the material body, ones like Berserker, for example, which Rosen inherited when he snatched Shogo's body. You saw assorted cases like this, but in the end, I agreed with Guy that the stronger skills were those that latched onto one's soul. They were easier to hide, harder to have taken from you, and served you well as unexpected trump cards in battle. Ultimate skills, too, were soul skill level in power, and I suppose that means only a limited number of people could wield them. But that wasn't all. There were actually two types of soul-oriented skills, not just those that resided in the soul, but those that were carved into it. Seal, for one, was pretty much fully assimilated into my soul. We were inseparable, so I didn't need to worry about anyone taking it away from me. Still best kept a secret, but regardless. This same rule applied to ultimate skills. If they resided in your soul, there was a chance someone could take them away, but if they were carved in there, you could safely assume that was no longer a concern. However, it was impossible to tell one from the other. I thought about this as I listened to the conversation around me. So, connecting this to our earlier topic, Guy began. Right, the abilities Veldenava released are part of the resurrection cycle now, residing in souls strong enough to take them? Luminous asked. Yes, exactly. But in my case, I didn't receive any abilities from Veldenava. He also didn't give me anything special, either, unlike you, Ramirez. No, this unique skill of mine is entirely my own creation. You see? It's a skill that imitates one of his pure abilities. And that is what a demonic skill is. I see. So my Asmodeus is simply an inferior copy as well. No, not in your case, Luminous. If the skill is modeled after your own will and wishes, it'll have the same abilities as the original. And this is something I'm less than excited to reveal, but my Pride skill has since evolved into the ultimate skill Lucifer, Lord of Arrogance. That skill works perfectly fine against angelic abilities, whether it wins out against them is purely a matter of my will against theirs. A match I'm sure you're confident about winning, Guy, but very well. To confirm, do you believe along those lines that there are at least 14 demonic ultimate skills, to go along with the 14 angelic ones? Probably. Demons are born as a response to angels, so I'm working on the assumption that demonic skills are created as a response to angelic ones. About what I figured, then. This world had far too many weird, unexpected connections. Heroes were fated to always cross paths with demon lords, so I suppose it wasn't too weird to see skills work in kind of the same way, but at the very least, said Guy, Veldenava's 7 virtue-based skills work in a pair with 7 sin-based skills, each modeled after a different sin. Lucifer, Lord of Arrogance, formed a pair with Uriel, Lord of Vows, according to Guy. And that was far from the only one. As he put it, Michael, Lord of Justice, was a pair with Sataniel, Lord of Wrath. Raphael, Lord of Wisdom, was a pair with Beelzebut, Lord of Gluttony. Sariel, Lord of Hope, was a pair with Belphegor, Lord of Sloth. Metatron, Lord of Purity, was a pair with Asmodeus, Lord of Lust. Raguel, Lord of Relief, was a pair with Mammon, Lord of Greed. Gabriel, Lord of Endurance, was a pair with Leviathan, Lord of Envy. In this way, he theorized, each ultimate skill was in a paired relationship with one on the other side. Personally speaking, I wasn't sure how I should react to this, given that I had already kinda sacrificed some of these skills and I knew it'd cause a huge stink if people found out. Keeping quiet about that, though, seemed like it'd present its own scary problems. And of course Seal was being notably silent, too. So I decided to wait and see how things worked out. With Guy's skill lesson over, we went back to the original topic. If I could add to what Guy said, I began, it looks like angelic skills include a kind of override circuit that prevents the owner from resisting Michael's orders. We believe that's why Dino turned traitor on us, so if you run into him, don't immediately assume he's our ally again. Sounds like a handful, Dagrel groaned. He's the most undedicated man I know, but he can be surprisingly strong in a pinch. What matters more, Luminous solemnly interjected, wholly ignoring the topic of Dino, is the fact that Lady Velzard is in the enemy's camp now. Is the same true for Lady Veelgrind as well? Dagrel brought a hand to his forehead. This was a more present issue. I'd like to pretend I didn't know the answer to that, but I kinda had an obligation to tell the Octogram about Veelgrind's current state. Ramirez knew all of it, too, so they were gonna find out anyway. But just as I opened my mouth, Leon sharply interjected. Wait. Veelgrind doesn't matter at the moment. Shouldn't we instead be checking whether any of us possess angelic skills? Yep. That's Leon for you, always diving into the crux of the issue. He always was astoundingly courageous that way, being an ex-hero and all. I knew you'd bring that up, Leon. A delighted Guy said. And, yeah, once I realized what today's conference was about, I understood that was going to be the most urgent topic at hand. The only question was who would bring it up. We'd be putting our own Demon Lord peers under suspicion, after all, and the only way to avoid any doubts was to reveal everything in your hand. That was why Guy and Luminous were so freely revealing their own skills earlier. Seeing this coming a mile away, I spoke up before people started leering at me. I was already late to the party, but then Ramirez shot into the air. Hey! Wait a minute. Are you doubting me or something? Don't you worry, Guy told her. You were factored out of this from the beginning. Yeah, exactly. Seal had already vowed to me that Ramirez's abilities were a special case. According to Seal, those skills weren't something Veldenava gave her, so much as a subsection of the abilities Veldenava lost when he was no longer a god. That was enough to make me stop suspecting Ramirez at once. Wah ha 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 ha. Well, I don't have any, either. I don't really know what my skills are, actually. No need for concern, Milim, Guy assured her. With the amount of sheer, insane force you throw around, your skill's clearly going to be the opposite of the ultimate skill, Michael. In other words, it was Sataniel, Lord of Wrath. I didn't know exactly what it gave her, but it wasn't any kind of mind control thing. I suppose that means I'm next, Dagrel said. To tell the truth, I have no experience with any skills in the way that all of you do. I'm closer to Ramirez along those lines, in that I've possessed these abilities from the moment I was born. Everyone fell silent at this. But it didn't seem like he was lying. Milliam was sharp about these sorts of things, and her silence spoke volumes in his defense. I believe in you, Dagrel. Me too. Heh. Well, if Rimuru and Milim say so, I'll trust you, too, said Guy. So 3 out of the 7 voiced their trust in him. Counting Dagrel himself, he now had a majority vote, but his supporters weren't done talking yet. PFFT. I'll believe in him, too. Whoa, hey guys, I'll trust him, too, if you're all gonna be like that. Leon casually dropped his suspicion of Dagrel. Ramirez, a little late but still sensible enough to see the trend, hopped on the bandwagon as well. The only open vote left was Luminous. Tisk. How annoying. I was hoping to engineer Dagrel's downfall here, but it appears the odds are against me. Gah ha ha. Well, Luminous, people seem to see me as a man of virtue, don't they? Too bad for you. Silence. If you ever fall under someone's control, I'll ridicule you as a weakling until the end of my days. The two of them didn't seem to get along much, but they also seemed to have this odd sort of faith in each other. Maybe I was just imagining it, though. Regardless, Dagrel was now free of suspicion. Luminous and Guy had already revealed their skills as Modius and Lucifer, and everyone had already concluded they were safe. That left just me and Leon, and I thought I should go on the offensive while I still could. I'm gonna exercise my right to remain silent on this topic, I said, smiling brightly. I have, like, a whole bunch of skills, and I don't want to go telling everyone about them, so. Right? I mean, my skills were all kinds of messed up. The ultimate skills Azathoth, Lord of the Void, and Shub-Niggurath, Lord of Abundance. I mean, how would it possibly benefit me to reveal those? I could try acting all serious and explain how they worked, but they'd all accuse me of making up a bunch of crap. I was fully convinced nobody would ever buy it, so I wanted to just keep mum about the whole thing. But, of course, this wasn't going to be allowed. You think we'll accept that reason? Guy promptly shut me down. No dice, huh? But I'm sure all hope isn't lost yet. Wah ha 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 ha. Well, I trust Rimuru, so he can keep quiet all he wants. Milim chimed in. But only if he promises to give me some honey later. I guess I could always trust her, despite how she was already trying to get something out of me. Either way, Milim was always gonna be an ally. In that case, I'll want some cake, then. 3 days' worth. And, yes, I could buy out Ramirez, too. 3 days was asking an awful lot, but we could work something out. Great. I espoused with a nod. Let's go with that. Milim, I'll give you 3 jugs of Apito's honey, and Ramirez, you'll get to have all my desserts for 3 days. Excellent. And I'll tell the world that you're perfectly okay, Rimuru. Ooh, yes, of course. Besides, Rimuru's the guy who exposed all those secrets about angelic skills in the first place. What's he stand to gain from revealing what's in his own hand? And there's no way anyone could rule over him. Wow. Ramirez bringing some actual logic into this. Normally, I'd never place any trust in what she said, but sometimes she had these flashes of brilliance. What's more, the logic was so convincing that the rest of the demon lords seemed to be buying it. That's a good point. If the master I trusted would betray us, that puts me under suspicion as well. I suppose I need to cast my lot for Rimuru. Dagrel accentuated his decision with a friendly guffaw. That gave me the majority, albeit one with me as the tiebreaker. If I could recruit at least one more ally here, that'd be perfect. As I thought that, I took a glance at Luminous. What? If you think you can bribe me as well, you've got another. I spoke up before she could finish. Shuna, you know, she's designed a new set of swimwear. Pardon. There's a nibble. Heh. Looks like my flanking maneuver on Luminous worked to brilliant effect. And you know, I've been working with Ramirez to create a real ocean in the labyrinth, too. Sandy beaches and everything. Yeah. We really nailed that, lemme tell ya. We sure did. Just picture it. A fully private seaside paradise, right in the forest of Jura. Rimuru, Luminous said, I think we need to take a few moments to talk this over. Imagine this perfectly blue, transparent sea, warmly embracing everyone who swims in its waters. Sunlight dancing beautifully on the surface, but it's still the labyrinth, so no need to worry about sunburn. But then, I seem to recall that you can make your skin any shade of tan you like, can't you? Wait. And so many beautiful women, bearing it all, basking in the sense of pure freedom from all their worldly concerns. Right. I have several requests and plans to show you as well, so I will pay you a visit after this meeting is over. Do you have some spare time for me? Oh, of course. So. Fine. I trusted you from the start anyway. Yahoo! Pumping my fist in the air was probably a faux pas, but either way, my victory was now set in stone. Come on, people. You actually think this kind of thing's okay? The mighty octogram, getting one over this easily? Guy glared at me. I guess my blitzkrieg of corruption wasn't sitting well with him. But it wasn't any care of mine. The winners get to write the history books, and all that. Sorry, Guy, but you're gonna have to admit defeat. I'm not exactly thrilled to see it, either, but it's fairly obvious Rimuru isn't being controlled by anyone, at least. I loved that tinge of frustration in Leon's voice. So, with that, I successfully bribed my way out of suspicion. That just left Leon. Now, Leon, how about you? Hair. My skill? Well, it's Metatron, Lord of Purity. Leon was quick to answer Dagrel's question, but, what did he just say? Metatron, Lord of Purity? That's totally an angelic skill, right? It was hard to describe the oh, God, now what'll we do? Atmosphere that suddenly pervaded the hall. Leon? Pretty rare of you to crack a joke in public, said Guy. This is meant to be a serious meeting, remember. Can you perhaps take a deep breath and answer the question? I'm not here to waste time, either, Guy. The Metatron skill you mentioned a little bit ago is absolutely in my possession. I was sure everyone hated to see this development. It looked for a moment like we were close to ending this meeting, and now we had this bombshell to deal with. Well, what to do about this, eh? Right, Rimuru? Why are you turning it over to me? I hollered at Guy. It's blatantly obvious that you're angling to push anything you don't want to handle on my shoulders. You're not even trying to hide it. That's what you got to say to me, huh? Then quit whining about it and come up with a solution, damn it. Enough of this. Stop with your ugly infighting, Luminous spat. Wah ha 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 ha. But I know how Guy feels, Luminous, Milim added. You can always rely on Rimuru at a time like this. Yeah, for real, said Ramirez. Let's leave this to Rimuru and go whip out some tea or something. My so-called allies were off in their own little world. And Ramirez was the worst of them all. I cursed her in my mind, swearing I'd get her back for it. Having people throw all these headaches at me. This was why demon lords were such scary dudes. Whoever said we cooperated with each other? Anyone who saw these shambles would think the opposite. Rimuru, an exasperated-looking Dagrel said, I know you have it tough. I've had a certain affinity for you ever since Dino got pushed on you, but you have my sympathies for this as well. What a nice guy. A giant and a demon lord, maybe, but you can't judge a book by its cover. Thanks, said Dagrel. No need for that stuff. Didn't we just discuss this? Oh, right. I really need to start thinking like a demon lord. Too much self-deprecation can be harmful at times. All right. Well, thanks, Dagrel. No need to worry about it, he said with a nod. But are we okay with Leon and all? Yes, chimed in Luminous. Considering how much they sniped at each other, they often seem to be of similar minds about things. He doesn't look unusual, but if his mind's been taken over, that is bad news for every one of us. All eyes were on me. They really needed to be talking to the man himself, but that didn't seem to occur to anyone. I wasn't capable of much more than conjecture on this topic, but there was one thing I had already confirmed earlier. Like I said, when Dino double-crossed us, the labyrinth was all busted up and open to enemy invasion. I think that's when he contacted the mystic Lord Feldway. Once he entered the labyrinth, added Ramirez, it became impossible to fully shut it away from the outside. So I don't think they ever had a direct conversation or whatever, but they could have used telepathy to communicate with each other, you know. Nice to see her at least try to contribute. I re-evaluated my opinion of her as I spoke to Guy. So I want to ask, what exactly happened over here, Guy? I imagine this was Velzad attacking you, but I want to know what transpired. You noticed? I believe that's the first thing anyone would think after seeing this mess. It was obvious to everyone that Guy and Velzad had a fight. There wouldn't have been all this carnage otherwise. But what I wanted to know was the reason, or, really, how Velzad fell into enemy hands. Could her override circuit be tapped into from anywhere, or did you need to be a certain distance away? The answer to that would tell us how much of a threat this really was. Also, unlike Velzad and, presumably, Dino, who both received their abilities from Veldenava, Leon's was probably created by himself and evolved to an ultimate. His override probably hadn't gone away, but for all we knew, maybe some sort of bug kept it from working. That'd explain why no orders had worked on Leon so far, but either way, it was crucial that we obtain some more accurate information. Like you said, that bastard Feldway penetrated our barrier of ice and snow and made his way in, Guy explained. Misery and Rain stepped up to engage him, and I wanted to teach him a lesson or two as well, but then Velzad got in our way. So there was no contact, but he got pretty close to you? I asked him. Same situation as Dino, then. But it's hard to figure out how to judge this. Meaning whether you need to be physically nearby to access the override circuit? Or do you think that's just what he's trying to make us think? Pretty much, yeah. Well, Leon? Do you feel anything? Nothing palpable, no. I am still myself, and I sincerely doubt anyone's taken over my mind. Leon sounded wholly confident about that, but neither Lieutenant Kondo nor Veilgrind herself had actually realized they were being controlled. It was a little tough to trust him at face value. Right, said Guy. So that means you still love me the most out of anyone. No, you fool. It is Chloe, of course, Leon spat. You hardly register in my mind at all. Great. He's okay, then. That unwavering avowal definitely felt like Leon's own will. Besides, it's not like I had any solid evidence either way. Just as Feldway was recorded in the labyrinth, Seal was right. When Chloe was facing off against Feldway, he said, quoting here, ha 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 ha. So that's where it was. It seems Sir Veldenava's will is for me to win after all. You could interpret that to mean that, until that point, neither Feldway nor Michael knew exactly who possessed an angelic ultimate skill. There was no guarantee that wasn't just an act on his part, but we couldn't go around self-doubting ourselves forever. My gut was telling me I was in the clear, so we needed to proceed on the assumption we could trust Leon. We could be more certain if you used predation on Leon and destroyed the override circuit itself. Seal made that sound all casual, but I had to say no. Preying upon Leon like that just didn't sit right with me. I suppose that might have been all the more reason why I wanted to trust him. Right. We won't reach any conclusion talking it out here. We could question him about all kinds of things, but I'd like to believe that he's okay. Let's call it a gray area, close to a black area, really, and see how things turn out. You're fine with that? I nodded briskly at Guy. I can't be absolutely certain on this, but I don't think the enemy knows where the angelic skill holders are located. Do you have any basis for that? Asked a curious-looking Dagrel. I decided to lay out my thoughts to him. Well, I have full records from when Feldway fought us in Ramirez's labyrinth. Based on what he said during the battle, the only angelic skill holders they're aware of are the ones who received their abilities straight from Veldenava. If someone manifested one of those skills themselves, I don't think they can pick up on that until they're physically pretty close to them. Right, Yeah. I'm not really a fan of revealing labyrinth data in public like this, but if it's for a good cause, no complaints from me. I appreciate it a lot, I said, trying to assuage Ramirez. The labyrinth really was exceptional in all aspects, and I had no problem expressing my appreciation for it. Hey, I'll never get sick of praise, you know. She seemed to enjoy it, too. Not wanting this to become an endless cycle, I got back to the subject. Anyway, Leon hasn't made his skill public outside of here, so I think it'll be a while before the enemy finds out about it, if at all. Indeed, said a discouraged-looking Leon. I'd be foolish to reveal the cards in my hand, save in exceptional circumstances like these. Yes, Luminous agreed, Leon is right. I imagine he could be found out rather easily if he's approached at close range, so I agree that we can't fully rest easy about this, but it'd be ridiculous to be too wary of each other and ruin our relationships at a time like this. I have no objection to that, Dagrel also agreed. They really did think alike, despite their differences. It was funny to see them constantly seething at each other, but they were still keeping their cool and making sound judgments, so I didn't see any problem with that. Yeah, I trust whatever Rimuru says, and Leon isn't lying, either. With Milim's seal of approval as well, this problem was fully solved, or so I thought, until Ramirez just had to get in another word. Right, so there you go. We might need to keep an eye on Leon, but the problem is who's gonna do the watching. Great. If she tossed something like that in here. Rimuru? Said Guy. No. Don't say any more. I know what you want. I knew it. I knew they'd want me to be Leon's observer. So I acquiesced. Outside of Dino the deserter, we've concluded that all 7 of us in here are united under the same cause, I declared. That, and I think we all understand just how dangerous a foe this is. We'd figure out how to track Leon later. Now, Guy, what do you plan to do with this Michael thing? I focused on what Guy had to say. Huh? I'm gonna crush it, of course. It will be all-out war, then. Luminous sounded thoughtful about it. It was the will of everyone else in here as well. Wah ha 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 ha. I'm getting so pumped now. Heck yeah, Ramirez agreed with Milim. The time has come to show off what I can really do. Whether it's Feldway or Michael, I'll floor 'em all with a single punch. If this so-called mystic lord is back, we won't be able to avoid a fight. Our very lands are at stake. Milim could back up her boasting with results, but Ramirez talking like that seemed pretty unrealistic to me. A punch from her wouldn't do much, but her labyrinth was extremely vital to us, so I opted not to pick on her about it. Do we know just how large the enemy force is? Leon asked. Guy shook his head. We know it consists of at least the 7 primordial angels, including Feldway and Dino. That, and Michael, who's serving as their supreme commander. And to that we can add Lady Velzet as well? Said Luminous. A Tema war is never a breeze, but this one could prove quite a challenge. Pardon? A Tema war, you said? Yes. A war that occurs approximately once every 500 years. But isn't that usually kicked off when whoever holds Ludora's ability summons the angels? Dagrel was being awfully casual about this, but it was enough to surprise me and everybody else. What? Do not make up stories like that, Dagrel. Luminous flared up at him, but Guy raised a hand to stop her. Calm down, Luminous. What Dagrel says is accurate. Ludora has an ability called Armageddon, you see, and he can use it to summon a force of angels and have them do whatever he wants. Ludora himself seemed to have trouble keeping control over that skill, though. It looks like he was only capable of giving them simple orders. As Guy explained, this battle occurred on a 500-year cycle. However, since the summoned angels didn't have any physical bodies, they wound up vanishing after no longer than a week's time. I rued the fact that I wasn't informed of this sooner. Question, I said to Guy. Yes? Could angels remain in this world if they're granted physical bodies, like demons can? Actually, I didn't need to ask, did I? The Tengu race, Benimaru's wife Mumiji among them, were created when angels were granted bodies by the wolfmen. With all the things that might happen in these wars, I could easily see lots of species being born that way. But this did nothing to dispel my bad premonition. It is the forbidden curse known as Dead Birthday. Seal was on point yet again. It knew exactly what I was thinking. You look worried about something. Speak up. I'll listen to you. With Guy pressing me, I decided not to hide anything. Well, you guys know about Kazalim the Curse Lord, right? To tell the truth, Kazalim's been taken over by the enemy, too, and he's been creating a bunch of walking dead. I had given orders to stop this ceremony if they found a chance, but I didn't really know how effective that was, sadly. A dead birthday, you mean? How many thousands died in it? Gaia asked me. Around 60,000. The imperial members of Yuki's composite division. So I think that created maybe 10 of them max. Emphasizing quality over quantity, eh? They'll each at least have the power of a Clayman, then. Perfectly fine vessels for a primordial to slip into. I think Guy's got the wrong idea. My concerns lie elsewhere, so I better correct him while I can. No, those 7 primordial angels obtained physical bodies a long time ago. I think they made the transformation over on their world, with Feldway leading them. And Dino's buddies, too. What were their names? Pico and Gasha, right? Yeah, them. Ramirez saved me once again. Gotta thank her for that. So what you're worried about is... Right, I'm thinking these walking dead will serve as bodies for the high-level angels they summoned via the Dead Birthday. Angels have only a very thin sort of sentience, right? So if you let them set up shop inside the soul of something with much more defined self-awareness, I think you could create a new species of utter bruisers with angelic powers, you know? Guy and the other demon lords fell silent. After a few seconds, they began to talk among themselves, saying things like, "Oh, come now, and you scare me with your conjecturing sometimes." But it's not like I wanted to tell them stuff like that. The possibility just came to mind, is all. And you think there's a good chance of that happening, Rimuru? Gaia asked me. Again, can you stop trying to push responsibility on me for everything I say? Sure. So what is it? If it were me, I'd certainly make the attempt. Failure just means losing one walking dead, after all. Yeah. I guess I'd do the same, too. No point having a huge army if they're all weaklings. Guy and I nodded at each other, the other demon lords looking at us in disgust. What's with that, huh? I think anyone would try it, if it'd boost their war power and all. Don't look at me like that, I shouted. I dunno what's actually happening, but we need to think about worst-case scenarios, don't we? You're right, but, Luminous said, kicking off the debate. You really are a menace. And the scariest thing of all is how you act like you can do something about that if it happens. That's right, Rimuru, said Dagrel. By high-level angels, you're talking about seraphim, but a body as powerful as Clayman's would be able to support that well enough, I'm sure. The result could reach the level of an awakened demon lord, I imagine. And if something like what Dagrel described appears, several of them, even, we too would need to brace ourselves, added Luminous. Louis and Gunther would have a hard time, at least. Instead of whining at me like I expected, they were whining more about how to deal with this. Sir Guy, everyone seems pretty worked up about this. Can you help restore some order here? I asked. Whoa, I told you to drop the sir already. We all have the right to speak as equals in here, don't we? And it's not like it'll hurt you to step in and deal with this problem, either. Oh, shut up. Like you ever pay me any respect. Why do I always get the short end of the stick, huh? I was no longer holding back. It calmed me down a bit. Sure, Guy was scary, but we were good. What's the big problem? Just kick their asses, and it'll all work out fine. Yeah. And we have my master Veldora here, too. You don't need to be quaking in your boots that much. Milliam and Ramirez had been the most consistently optimistic voices in this meeting. I was jealous of how unconcerned they were. As for Veldora, the guy Ramirez was placing her hopes on, he was, well, probably reading manga in the other room. He'd been talking recently about all this wondrous knowledge he'd uncovered, but it turned out he was just reading a long non-fiction historical series. He'll probably be talking about Zhuge Liang's brilliant strategy from the Romance of the Three Kingdoms pretty soon, and it'll probably be up to me to conjure up the rest of the series for him, so I can't say I'm too excited about any of that. At least he wasn't bothering us in here. It's not going to be easy, though. Both Lady Velzard and Lady Veilgrind are in enemy hands, aren't they? Even with that wretched Veldora on our side, the enemy has a clear advantage. And it's a silly idea to rely on that stupid dragon anyway. Luminous was right. Veldora might seem reliable, but he rarely was. He got all wimpy whenever his sisters were around, and he'd been caught by the enemy not long ago. Oh, I think we're safe when it comes to Veilgrind. I was so distracted by everything that I kind of let that drop. A clear mistake, of course. Why are you so sure about that? Oops, I thought, but it was already too late. I hated standing up on stage like this and delivering all this tumultuous news, but by now, I had no choice but to be honest. Well, thanks to some stuff that happened during her battle with me, Veilgrind managed to escape ultimate dominion. Also, she doesn't have the ultimate skill Ragwell any longer, so we don't have to worry about Michael controlling her. Huh? Play dumb about it, play dumb about it. Hey, it was a really hard battle, you know. I was totally absorbed by it, brain working on automatic, and the next thing I knew, I had a pretty good victory drop in my lap, sort of thing. The Demon Lord's doubtful eyes were killing me. But if I lost here, they'd probably make me reveal everything else I knew. What the hell did you do to her? Even Guy looked shocked for a change. That's, a trade secret. I had to keep mum about my abilities. They wouldn't believe me if I talked about them, all it'd do was place more suspicion on me. Maybe I was worrying too much, but I really felt I had to block this at all costs. Tisk. All that petty nonsense, Dagrel spat. Why you gotta be so stingy, huh? I don't think it's a matter of that. Call it strategizing. No, I mean, I know you haven't experienced it, Dagrel, but the rest of us have seen our skills evolve now and then, right? I haven't, though. Yeah, thanks, Ramirez. I ignored her attempts to put a word in edgewise. Well, Veilgrind kinda ran into the same situation. During our battle, it's like, you know, she got her senses back, just like that. She told me that Ragwell evolved on her right then. I was embellishing the story a little bit, okay, a lot, but I think I got my point across. True, yeah. I don't totally remember, but I think something like that's happened to me, yeah, Milliam noted. Skills evolving amid pitched battle? Luminous mused. It doesn't seem impossible to me. Not normal, but... That was the case with me, too, actually. I was walking the line between life and death, and I wagered everything on my own potential. That was how I obtained Metatron, and even now, I have no regrets about that. Leon seemed convinced, at least, given the experience he had. That was a relief. If I claimed that Veilgrind didn't tell me about her current abilities, I could pretend I never knew about Cthulhu, her new ultimate skill. It wasn't technically my fault anyway. Seal did all that stuff for me. I thought ultimate skills were as far as they could go, but apparently there is still room to evolve. Tisk. I got a lot to learn, I see. Guess I was kidding myself into thinking I was at my limits. With that final observation from Guy, the topic was put to rest. I had the feeling that our debate wasn't making much progress, so I decided it was time for one more recap. It was vital that we had an accurate picture of our enemy's powers, this wasn't something we could gloss over. So you're certain that Veilgrind is all right? Gaia asked me. Yeah. She's protecting Masayuki the hero right now. He and I are on friendly terms, so we agreed to help each other when we need to. We can count her as on our side, then? I didn't want to make that call for her, but she'd probably lend a hand if asked. Well, we should just be glad she's not on theirs, shouldn't we? I, for one, never want to fight her again. Fair enough. Almost no one could beat her in a fight, I'm sure, so good job on that one. With Velzad already opposing us, we'd be up the creek if Veelgrind switched sides, too. Guy sounded like he hated the idea, and I'm sure he meant it. I'd say a good half of us in the room didn't stand a chance against a true dragon. The only ones who could take a swing at her were me, Guy, and Milim, maybe Dagrel, too. Either way, taking an enemy like her out of the picture was nothing but a godsend. Oh, and one more thing. And while we're talking about Veelgrind, let me bring this up, too. So 4 out of the 7 primordial angels have traveled back to their own world, Feldway included, but 3 of them attacked Ramiriz's labyrinth. You bet they did. And with my talents, I trundled them right out of there. Ramiriz nodded, like this was news to her. I kept going before she derailed my train of thought. Regardless of the details. They introduced themselves to us as Feldway the Mystic Lord and the 3 mystic leaders serving him. Yeah, they've been plotting behind the scenes for ages to wipe out the humans on this world, said Guy. We opposed them, calling them the magic race and so on, but they were actually mystics all along. I thought magic race was the generic term for anyone that fought against humans, but that's where it came from? But anyway, out of these 3 mystic leaders, Veelgrind's already destroyed one of them. Just something to keep in mind. Cornu was the name of the guy, I think, the one who riled up Veelgrind by talking trash about Masayaki. I could sense that she had grown stronger, but one hitting a mystic leader? Scary. Then again, this Cornu didn't seem to have the same lofty aspirations as Feldway or even Zerario for that matter. That's just something I sensed looking back at the video footage, but after analyzing everything that happened in the labyrinth, Seal said that while they were mostly equal in existence points, Cornu was a step behind in terms of actual strength. I'm not sure how it came to that conclusion, but I trusted in it. Thus, while I wasn't trying to underestimate my foes at all, there was no need to worry about someone who was already destroyed. That's why I decided to tell them. I'm sure it was Cornu, right? I've known him for years and years, and I'm not exactly shedding a tear for him right now. Guy sounded like he couldn't care less about the man. It meant one less enemy to worry about, and he was glad for that, but that's about it. Very Guy-like of him, I thought, so I moved on without commenting on it, or I meant to, but Milim interrupted me. Hey, now seems like a good time for this. I got something to report, too. I decided to let her have her say. So one of the other mystic leaders is this girl named Obila, and a little while ago she asked to serve under me out of nowhere. We had this meeting totally in secret, so I don't think Feldway or any of the other mystics are onto her. This didn't throw me for a total loop, but I wasn't sure how to react to it, either. My first thought was, that's her move, huh? Wow. Great job, Milim. How did you win her over? Yeah, tell us. Obila's not as narrow-minded as Cornu was. I think she's a pretty serious woman, too. The last person I'd expect to switch sides. So how did that subject come up? Me and Guy questioned Milim at the same time. Our eyes met, indicating that we were thinking the same thing. In essence, we were concerned that Milim was being tricked. We both nodded at each other. With my natural wiles, of course. She understood how amazing I was, so she came up to me with the offer. It's tough being so popular, huh? She was smiling through this, but we weren't about to take her at her word. Don't get carried away like that, admonished Guy. It might be one of the enemy's schemes. Oh, it's fine, replied Milim, not listening to him at all. Obila didn't tell me any lies or whatever. I murmured. Well, Milim, there's this manga I read about the romance of the 3 kingdoms, and one chapter's about this really obvious trick they call ambush poison. Basically, they send this guy over to their opponent's side, pretending to surrender and asking to join them, and then they can spy on them all they want to. We're talking something that's been around since ancient times. And here she is, coming over right when war's about to break out. That's all but asking us to question her motives, isn't it? Veldora was reading that manga right now. Now I, too, am a master strategist, I recall him saying, but if it were that simple to train a military tactician, war would be a lot easier for all of us. Besides, the story setting's so different from here, I don't think it's useful as much more than a reference. Either way, this was clearly suspicious, something I tried to convince Milim of. But she just gave me her usual bold smile. It's no problem. I doubted her, too, but I talked it over later with Carillion and Frey, and we all agreed to trust in Obila. Milim was no fool, of course. I'm sure she did all the necessary checking. And if Carillion and Frey made the same decision, maybe we could trust her after all. What did you and Obila talk about? I decided to ask. Well. Then, upon hearing the whole story, I opted to make the same decision. So Obila's over in the Mystic Palace, tracking Ivalij the World Destroyer dragon? In that case, she wouldn't have the free time or capacity to try anything against us anyway. That was the conclusion Guy made after Milim finished. Ivalij, and the cryptids under it, were apparently hellbent on destruction and weren't open to negotiation. If Obila got distracted at all, it could lead to Ivalij's return, so it was natural to assume she wouldn't be part of any invasion. But something still bothered me. If Feldway really doesn't care if the world's destroyed, like Obila said, wouldn't he try to release Ivalij on us? Feldway and Michael wanted to resurrect Veldenava, but even if they failed, we'd still be in big trouble. They might lose all hope and turn to wanton destruction. Nothing's scarier than someone who doesn't consider the consequences of their actions. That's why I brought it up, however. I find that hard to believe, Rimuru. It seemed like a perfectly viable scenario to me, but it was surprisingly unpopular among my peers. First Luminous shot it down, followed by Dagrel. Feldway, he said, isn't enough of a fool to try using a monster too strong and uncontrollable for him to handle. Oh, so Ivalij is stronger than him? It was a real pain last time, lemme tell ya, added Ramirez. Guy took the dragon on, but I had to pitch in to make sure the whole planet didn't get busted up. Gah ha ha. Yeah, Ivalij really could destroy a planet if you're not careful. Fight the wrong way, and you're gonna have a lot of trouble on your hands, said Dagrel. Maybe it'll destroy his foes for him, but what about after that? You can't really rule a world if it's been torn to shreds, I offered. Guess I was being unrealistic. Ivalij honestly did seem like some kind of freak. Wah ha 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 ha. Just the kind of opponent I like. Milim crowed. If it decides to rear its ugly head around me, I'm gonna give it a good thrashing. Don't. Forget it. Yeah, no way. Milim, Guy started, me and everyone else here understand how strong you are, but you need to think this through. Not that I'm one to talk, but consider the damage you might cause to the surroundings. Ooh, come on, I know how to let up a little, you know. So whether it's this world-destroying dragon or not, just a quick punch or two, and... Okay, fine. Realistically speaking, if Ivalij gets revived, then sure, I'll take it on. I've been wanting to settle the score with it anyway. The next chance I have, I will take it out. Guy's voice resonated ominously across the room. Nobody was going to challenge him on that. Milim looked a tad put off, but we all agreed that should Ivalij show up, Guy would take care of things. Now, back to Obila. Would it be possible, queried Dagrel, to ask her about enemy internals and such? I tried, but it didn't seem like she knows very much about their war power over in this world, Milim replied. Feldway's a pretty suspicious guy, so maybe he gets anxious about people asking him too many questions. Obila's right about that, agreed Ramirez. Feldway's a smart fella, and I'm sure he doesn't want his staff to know more than they need to. So he just gives people orders and sends them off? I asked. It reminded me of at least one annoying boss I'd had. Not exactly, said Guy, leaning back as if recalling a memory. The way he thinks, if you're actively trying to carry out the tactics he gave you, then you shouldn't even have the time to worry about other people. Obila's smart not to pry into him. If she wanted to deceive us, she could have earned our trust by divulging some false intelligence. If she'd simply said I don't know instead, that actually would have improved our trust in her a fair amount. I highly doubted Feldway and I saw eye to eye about very much, though. Thinking about your team as nothing but pawns. Pretty self-righteous of him. I bet he thinks that everything he conceives is correct. I couldn't help but speak my mind. Guy smiled back at me. Is that sarcasm meant for me? Not at all. Careful there. Guy isn't self-righteous, more like despotic. He sees the demons serving him as less than pawns. Best not to inadvertently stir him up like that. For now, I said to take his mind off it, let's lean toward trusting in her and see how things work out, maybe. Everyone nodded back at me. With Obila behind us, we returned to the main subject. Getting sidetracked this much was starting to tire me out. I swear, I said out loud, this meeting's not going anywhere at all. Does anyone else in here have any secrets they're not sharing? You're one to talk. Fair point. I probably had the most secrets of everyone, so that statement was a mistake. Regretting it, I focused back on the meeting, which was mostly being led by Luminous at the moment. Regardless, it's hard to build cooperation between ourselves if we hardly see each other. So let me step up and try to summarize matters. With that, she ran down all the forces our enemy had. Michael was their leader, Velzad the Ice Dragon serving under his rule. There was Feldway the Mystic Lord, and his assistant Zerario of the three Mystic Leaders. Zerario was tasked with watching over the Insectors, led by Xeranus the Insect Lord. Xeranus must have had his own staff, too, but Obila didn't know much about them, another unknown, and honestly, it was this force I was the most curious about. All the Insectors I knew, at least, were scary strong. Zijin and Apito go without saying, of course, but there was also Raziel, the guardian deity of the West, and Minaza, a single-digit, number 6, I think, who Xian defeated. Xeranus looked like a handful to me, and I'm sure he had a lot of powerful Insectors under him, something we'd need to watch out for. Then there was the trio of Dino, Pico, and Gasha. Being as powerful as an awakened demon lord was trouble enough, but we didn't know what kind of ultimate skills they had, if any. It wouldn't be weird if they possessed some of their own ultimate skills, so it was best to assume they did. And that just left. Those walking dead with angels housed in them? If they're about equal to us, that makes them a menace indeed. If we had an accurate idea of their numbers, at least, that would put my mind at ease. You can't ask for the world like that, Dagrel, Luminous countered. We should be glad we know what we do and form a strategy based on that. How do you mean? Retorted Leon. Do you want to decide who will take on whom in battle? It sounded like a waste of time to me, but it wasn't meaningless, either. Well, at the very least, Leon, we know that you shouldn't try fighting Michael, Dagrel replied. That was a given. He'd be in Michael's thrall, and that'd be it for him. In fact, we all needed to work together to make absolutely sure that didn't happen. I was concerned that Feldway might have these mind control abilities as well, not just Michael, but after examining all the info, I now had at least a vague idea about how that worked. So listen, it looks like Michael's abilities can be transferred to other people, including his mind control skills, to a certain extent, I told everyone. Thus, I think we're gonna need to keep Leon away from Feldway, too. We needed to assume that Feldway was borrowing that skill, much like Lieutenant Kondo did. How troublesome, Luminous said. If Leon were to be taken over, that would tip the balance of power in rapid order. Hearing her, I realized I had forgotten to say something. Oh right, and it's not only Leon who's in danger, either. What do you mean? Well, like I just said, in the fight not too long ago, Veldora fell into enemy hands for a bit. I am very keen to hear more about this, the bewildered Luminous urged. So I told them all about Regalia Dominion, an ability of Michael's that gave him absolute control over pretty much any target. I avoided talking about Chloe, since she'd already taken care of that herself. If things had gotten really bad, I'm sure Seal would have forcibly gotten itself involved, so I just trusted that it would save me if needed. Thus I stuck entirely to how Veldora acted in battle. You were the one who asked if anyone was holding any more secrets, weren't you, Rimuru? Asked Guy. Oh, did I? Yes. You sure did, said Ramirez. That you did, added Dagral. Absolutely, agreed Luminous. I'm certain you did. I had nobody on my side. It wasn't anything like a secret, I pleaded, just something I forgot to say earlier. Nobody was buying it. Why me? Ramirez knew about all this, too, but bringing that up wouldn't improve my situation any. So I gave up and apologized. With the other demon lords all peeved at me, it proved surprisingly difficult to smooth things over. We were back on track, at least, but looking at matters, we really were in just a terrible situation. Not only had we lost key firepower, but the enemy had in turn gained some. It was like one player in a chess game getting to replace any pieces they lost, and I honestly wasn't sure how we were gonna win under these conditions. It was my fault for forgetting to mention that earlier, and I'm sure it badly unnerved everyone who heard it. So is anyone here being influenced by Regalia Dominion, then? Luminous asked. No worries there. People with angelic skills don't seem to realize they're being mind-controlled, but Regalia Dominion is more of a forced thing, so you lose yourself and start acting weird, immediately. With Veldora, we're connected by our souls anyway, so he told me that he was taken over the moment it happened. I see. So how did you free Veldora from that? This question again? Well, I ate him up and Seal did a bit of ability adjust magic on him, but I had no intention of being honest about that. No one would believe me anyway. So I had to conjure up another story. It was just like with Veilgrind. We were involved in this heated battle for who knows how long, and then Veldor evolved his own abilities. I guess you could say that our friendship won the day, yeah. The stares were almost painful. I could tell that everyone found this a little hard to believe, but that was my story and I had to stick with it. You know, Rimuru, Guy began, I fought pretty hard against Velzad myself, but she didn't show any signs of evolving her skills. Hey, I'm sure it varies from dragon to dragon. I knew expecting them to believe any of this was asking way too much of my peers. It varies, eh? No dice? I'm being doubted so damn much in here. What'll I do? I could always just tell them the truth, it doesn't really matter whether they believe it or not. But if I go with that move... If you go with that move, Master, you will be asked to fight against anyone who's been mind-controlled, and your ability set will be pored over with a fine-toothed comb. Right, I'm sure it would. It was all Seal's doing anyway, not mine, I couldn't even begin to explain it. Keeping quiet was definitely the way to go. Enough, Luminous said. Clearly he's in no hurry to talk, and I'm sure it was another incomprehensible miracle on his part anyway. If we can tell who's under its influence, I'd say Regalia Dominion isn't as much of a threat as Ultimate Dominion. The question here is how we'll counter it. The way she saw it, at least we could tell when it was happening. What we really needed to do was discuss how to deal with Michael and his force. I nodded my agreement. Instead of deciding who fights whom, why don't we work out what moves we'll make based on where they might strike us? Guy nodded. I agree with Rimuru. The enemy is no fool, so I doubt they'll try spreading their forces wide. We clearly needed a way to call for help if it turned out to be a huge enemy force, or if one of us ran into something we had trouble with. We knew that, but there were problems to address. All right, but we're spread out, too, aren't we? I asked. Should we all stay in one place to make sure we're ready whenever the enemy shows up? That won't work. Right? Looks like Guy's on my side, then. Personally, my plan was to defend my nation with my life. Surely Leon and Luminous would hate to leave their homeland, and the same was true for Dagral and Milim as well. Okay, I had my doubts about Milim, but I was certain about everyone else. Thus, we needed a system where we could send reinforcements anywhere we might be attacked. True enough, said Luminous. We have an obligation to defend our own nations. If worse comes to worst, we may need to abandon our territories, but I'd very much like that to be a last resort. Yes, I agree. And don't worry, Luminous, Dagral urged. If you abandon your land, I'll gladly take it for you. Don't give me that. I have no intention of letting you have it, so don't even think about it. Dagral was ready to take the land, and Luminous was ready to stop him. But beyond their squabbling, it was clear that nobody could leave their home bases. What will you do, Guy? I asked. Ramirez lives in my nation, but you don't really have much in your territory that you need to defend at all costs, do you? Not really, no. Maybe I'll pay a visit to Leon. I'm worried about him. Leon scowled at that, but I could understand his concern. He was my biggest worry, and it wasn't like he had been fully cleared of all doubt yet. That was why we talked about me keeping tabs on him. So Guy was being perfectly valid. If Guy will be there, maybe I don't need to watch Leon after all? But here, Rimuru, you have all kinds of extra staff you can send out, don't you? Go deploy them to Luminous, Dagral, Milim, and Leon, too, while you're at it. Huh? Whoa. This sudden demand from Guy plunged me into the depths of bewilderment. To make a long story short, I couldn't say no to him. I bravely resisted, but Guy wasn't interested in hearing it. Even worse, he ordered me to set up transport circles in each of our domains so people could travel to and fro quickly. It made me want to shout at him that I wasn't his employee, but there was one thing stopping me. The fact was that I could never, ever beat him. So it was better just to give up fast. When Guy was serious about something, the sheer pressure he put on you was far too staggering to defy. Maybe I could force my way through it, but it was a lot easier for me to just surrender. Who should I deploy, and to where? I needed people with consistent transportation and thought communication skills, the ability to work alone in any situation, and a decent resistance to mind control. Along those lines, I could think of 3 demonesses perfect for the job. But I had already assigned Testarossa to tackle assorted schemes of ours around the Eastern Empire, and I didn't think I could tap her for this. Carrera and Ultima would have to be my main players. Maybe a few people from my cabinet, too. First off, I think Geld would be the best guy to send to Milim's domain. I need to get construction back on track over there, and you know each other already, so I'm pretty sure he'd sign on for it. Great. Yeah, everybody loves him, Milim agreed. And speaking of which, Midre's really keen on seeing Gable sometime, too. He said he wanted to spar with him again. Oh yeah? Not a bad idea, maybe. I had assigned Ultima to train Gable, and just a few days later, he was already staring at me with tears in his eyes. Maybe Midre could be a nice break for him. Ultima would also join him in that case, but since Tempest was still in war mode, there wasn't much police work for her to do anyway. Plus, I could call them right back as needed, so this seemed easy enough to commit to. All right. In that case, I'll send Geld, Gable, and Ultima to Milim's domain. Okay. Looking forward to it. First one down. Next came the Holy Empire of Lubelius. So, as for you, Luminous, do you have any requests? I've learned a thing or two in negotiations like this. I knew she'd fly into a rage if I suggested sending Veldora over. I figured it was better to talk things out before stepping on any landmines. Let's see. She thought for a moment before answering. Guess asking that question was the smart thing to do. I'd like to have Shion, the woman you came in with. She's visited my land before, so she'd be familiar with things. I knew Luminous was a huge fan of Shion's violin skills. It didn't strike me as strange that she remembered her. All right, I'll send Shion over. Her, and maybe Adalman and his assistants, too. Adalman knew Luminous as well. He had some beefs with the 7 Days clergy, I think, but that was all in the distant past now, so it'd probably be fine. Yes, I did cause some trouble for him before. It could be interesting to provide him with some of my teachings. Very well. I accept. Roger that. Luminous was now taken care of. Now, Agrel said, who will you send to my domain? I don't know any of your underlings personally, so I suppose it doesn't matter too much. True enough. If anybody's okay with him, then I'll send Carrera. Carrera? Yeah. You might know her as June, the original. June? He shouted, looking tremendously alarmed. Don't tell me you've tamed that firebrand. I dunno about tamed, exactly, but, yeah, kind of. You'll just have to accept that, Agrel. I know you have things to say about that, but now's not the time for it. And by the way, added Luminous, when he said Ultima, he meant Violet. I am just as exasperated about it as you, trust me. Oh, that's right. The domain Ultima ruled over overlapped with Luminous's and Dagrel's lands, apparently, so they had known each other for a while. Luminous's comment made Dagrel shout out "Ka?" in abject surprise. Yeah, I'm real exasperated, too, he said to her. And it's not just June and Violet, either. There's simply no point arguing over all the insane things Rimuru has done by now. They were having their way with my good name. Milliam was nodding along as well, and honestly, wasn't she supposed to be on my side? Whatever. So, yeah. I'll send Carrera over to you, okay, Dagrel? Wait. Wait just a minute. He stood up from his seat, loudly protesting, arms open wide like he was about to start dancing. Hang on, is he trying to defy me? Objection. I do believe I have the right to refuse this. His face told me just how desperate he was. Clearly he wasn't going to give an inch. Leon, meanwhile, was flashing a calm, collected smile, all but proclaiming out loud how glad he was Carrera wasn't coming his way. Listen, Rimuru. If you send that wild marauder to me, my Damargania will fall in just a few days. I'm not here to make demands, but could you at least select someone a little less hot-headed? Personality counts more for him than strength, I guess. Which, I dunno, a lot of my Tempest friends have a screw or two loose, so I decided to ask him some more questions. Dagrel's domain was the holy void of Damargania, a barren land with little in the way of resources. Most of its structures had been abandoned and reclaimed by the sand dunes. His image of Carrera couldn't be worse. He basically saw her as this vengeful destroyer who constantly tossed around nuclear magic spells as a kind of hobby. Milliam's nickname was the Destroyer, and as far as Dagrel was concerned, Carrera was worse than that. Gee, she's not that bad of a. Yes, she is. I'd agree with Dagrel. She damaged my own lands on a daily basis once, so I think I understand his feelings all too well. Dagrel was staying absolutely firm, and now the normally taciturn Leon was regaling us with tales of Carrera's violent streak. I had to believe their stories, really, I had no choice. So what did that leave me with? All right. In that case, why don't I have Carrera go to Leon instead? They seem to know each other, and Guy would be over there anyway. He'd keep Carrera from going too far out of line, right? A pretty good idea, if I do say so myself. And yet, surely you have to be joking. Did you even listen to what I just said? I absolutely refuse. I would never let that demon set foot in my lands. Ever. Dagrel was all smiles, but Leon was putting his foot down hard. He was angry enough that I could practically see the italics he was adding to his rant, so I must have struck one serious nerve with him. It was kind of funny to see, so I resolved that I'd send Carrera over no matter what. But Guy stopped me. Rimuru, you know you can't send Carrera there. Why not? Because she likes to pick fights with me, too, all the time. And whenever it looks like she's going to lose, she leaves a few parting words and tries to run away from me. Do you know that? This war isn't any kind of game, and I don't want to waste my stamina on extraneous distractions. Am I clear? He was correct, of course. And the dreadful tinge to his eyes indicated just how serious he was about this. Now, If Carrera was absolutely faithful in following your orders, and if you are willing to take responsibility for whatever happens, then maybe I'll think about it, all right? But you know that's impossible, isn't it? Having it put it in such stark terms didn't make me too confident. I could stop her if I was standing next to her, but with Carrera, once you take your eyes off her, you just never know. Right, of course not. Carrera's the girl who tried popularizing this game in my labyrinth, where she tried to punch a hole through as many floors as she could. I wish she'd stop with that. It's really annoying. Wow. She was being that reckless? Guess she was a problem child in more places than I knew about. For cases like that, Diablo's the one responsible for supervising her, so I'll put the screws on him. As I deflected responsibility, I thought about what I should do. Wah ha 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 ha. I dunno, I kinda like Carrera. I'd love to see her, so you can just send her over to my domain as a guest. Oh. Here's Milim giving me exactly the kind of offer I want. You sure about that, Milim? Totally. Great. Problem solved. Milim would host Carrera, and I'd send Ultima over to Dagrel instead. Frey might yell at Milim about it later, but that was none of my business. Let's move on before Milim changes her mind. Okay, I'll put Carrera over in Milim's domain and give Dagrel Ultima. I guess she's familiar with the area, and you don't have any complaints about her, right? No, I don't want. Great. It's settled, then. Dagrel, play nice with Ultima for me, okay? I took that as a green light from Guy. Dagrel was about to say something, but I just pretended I'd imagined that. So now I had my assignments for Luminous, Milim, and Dagrel's lands. That left Leon's golden land of El Dorado. Who would I send there? You know, if Guy's going there anyway, do I really have to send any of my own people? Besides, Guy can watch Leon to check if he's suspect. I just don't see the need to dilute my fighting power for Leon's sake. I had been wanting to say that. Why did I have to send my forces out of the nation when this huge war was about to break out? I mean, it wasn't all that bad, of course. The 3 demonesses could teleport back home in a crisis, and at worst I could just summon them back anyway. I needed to send Geld out because we couldn't hold up that construction project forever, and Gable, well, he was kind of bodyguarding Geld, too, you could say. Geld had more pure fighting power, but defense was his main specialty, so it'd be more helpful if we had a dedicated attacker with him. Gable was good at both offense and defense, so I thought pairing him with Geld would produce some pretty neat outcomes. As for Adalman and his crew, I really wanted them to focus on Labyrinth defense, but sending Shion alone to Luminous's domain made me anxious. She's beyond well qualified on the fighting front, but her behavior is, well, dicey at times. Adalman's mastered all types of magic, and he told me he knows teleportation travel like the back of his hand. He knows Luminous, and I'm pretty sure he'll be perfectly polite around her. I thought it was a pretty appropriate assignment, really. So all that was set in stone. And now I didn't have anyone left to send to Leon. Hey, quit being so stingy. You're practically swimming in million-class underlings, Guy spat. Yeah, I am, but I still need people to protect my nation, so. You worry far too much. You have Feldora, I presume. And how about that Benimaru character? No one would complain about having him. You know I can't do that. Benimaru just got married. And he has 2 wives. And they're both pregnant. What kind of ogre would I be if I sent him off on assignment until who knows when, right at this huge milestone in his life? Benimaru was ogre-derived himself, however, so he wouldn't mind. Jokes like that weren't funny at this juncture, though. If he wanted to go, that was another thing, but, back when lifetime employment was still a mainstream thing in Japan, big companies were known to send employees out on long-term business trips at the worst possible timing, right after marrying, or just after they built a new house, merely to test out their faith in the firm. If there was a good reason for it, then fine, but the way I heard the story, this was mainly done to harass employees. Any company that tried that today would get beaten down and go bankrupt in a hurry. and there's no way I wanted any injustice like that taking place in my own nation, but that was beside the point. Anyway, I told Guy, I gotta give a firm no on sending out Benimaru. PFFT. Your reasoning makes no sense to me, but fine. So who else, then? Oh, we can send Diablo out. I kept forgetting about him because he was always right next to me, but if I deployed Xion, I might as well deploy Diablo, too. If I left one behind and not the other, that was bound to lead to arguments. Shuna was my real secretary, too, so I doubted them being gone would hobble me much. That's the best decision for everyone, isn't it? Diablo, you said? Yeah. He's pretty strong, too. He'll be fine by himself. Hold on just one moment, Rimuru. Guy was speaking very softly, but nothing he'd say would be good news. So I ignored him and tried to bring this topic to a conclusion. And, I have a lot to deal with right now. I don't have enough personnel to pass out just for funsies, but I'm still handing out some of my best aces to everyone. So if you could show some consideration for that, please. When it came to Guy, it was better to start with your final offer than try to negotiate. With that in mind, I recalled my old job as a general contractor, way back when. The HQ chief once fought off one of our partner firms asking for more personnel on a project. Claiming he couldn't give up any more, stating that he'd already given them his best crew and there was nothing else to offer, that kind of thing. I'm sure the other side thought something like we don't have enough people because your staff is so incompetent. Most of the time, but nobody was foolishly honest enough to actually say that. Everybody involved, me included, knew that there was little to no sincerity behind this defense. Whether the staff we provided really were the best or not, well, that depended on luck, mostly. If the local government or partner firm had the right to name who they wanted, that could be a lot more interesting, though. It certainly gave insight into exactly who your partners actually valued, and who they wouldn't miss at all if they were gone. But anyway, that's all well in the past. Right now, my main goal was to palm Diablo off to Guy. Is there a problem? I waited for Guy's answer, staying dignified on the outside but sweating it hard on the inside. Tisk. You're getting more and more shameless every time I see you. But fine. I'll put up with Diablo this time. Phew. I won. Leon gave me no time to bask in my victory. Well, I don't care who I receive. I'd normally want to call Chloe over, but not in these circumstances, of course. And come to think of it, Rimuru, if you're interested, you should come visit my nation alongside Diablo. I promised I would invite you, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. Bringing Chloe over is out of the question, but maybe I should consider paying Leon a visit? Okay. I'll need to leave Chloe behind, but if our schedules work out, I'll drop by sometime in the future. I'll contact you through Diablo in advance when I do. I couldn't move Chloe around, she needed bed rest for now. Telling Leon that could lead to all kinds of unintended consequences, so I was better off keeping quiet about it. His invite, though, I didn't mind accepting at all. I may not have the free time for it with everything going on, but just sitting back home and waiting for Michael's side to act would get boring fast. Once all my prep work was done, I was planning to gradually segue back to my normal lifestyle. Very well. I look forward to hearing from you. Sure. And if Diablo causes you guys any trouble, just let me know. I'll re-educate him right then and there, and I won't take no for an answer. Got it. We won't be shy to reach out, okay? Give him a good lesson for us. This was Guy reinforcing the point, not Leon, even though Diablo hadn't done anything yet. I wonder why they have it out with each other so much? But maybe I'm better off not knowing. It's probably a bunch of drama I don't care about. So, with that thought in mind, I had a general idea of our future direction. Right, began Guy once we returned to the large reception hall we started the day in. I'm going to set off with Leon right now, but I'm counting on all of you to take action as directed. Whoa, you're not gonna tell us what's going on? Miseri told us some of it, but you could at least explain what direction you're going to take. Carillion and Frey had a word or two for Guy, it seems, and their concerns seemed valid to me. Guy always had a tendency to hurry things along to their conclusion too quickly. If he was convinced about something, nobody else's opinion mattered, he'd happily leave them in the dark. However, there was no way Guy could explain everything. And not just him. Miriam and Ramirez were too childish to remember it all, Dagrel and Leon weren't exactly gifted public speakers, and Luminous would never volunteer for such an annoying job. We'd get nowhere with any of them, so I needed to step up and do the talking instead. Well, regarding what we've all decided upon, you've been briefed about our enemies, right? I asked. Sure, yeah, Guy replied. Velzard's on the opposing side, huh? It looks that way, yes. But not because she's betrayed us or anything. I gave them my organized summary. It really was smart to have only us 7 demon lords in that conference. If we'd brought our attendants, we would have made even less progress. Guy saw that in advance, so it was right for him to make that choice. All those years of experience weren't for nothing. But, really, Guy had it pretty rough, too. We demon lords had, well, an idiosyncrasy or two, and it took an extraordinary sort of mental strength to bring all of us to a common agreement. That was how I mentally re-evaluated Guy as I finished up my summary. I didn't think it was very like you to be so frantic like that, but things are a lot more serious than I imagined. Frey was amazed. I think she regretted hearing about it. Yeah, well, I've got all this power. I wanna see how far I can go against a true dragon, but if it's Lady Velzard, there's no way I'm ever gonna win. Carillion was talking as boldly as usual, but I could see the sweat on his brow. I'm sure he grasped the levity of this situation, trying to figure out a way through it. Qua ha ha ha. Your name was Carillion, right? I have never come close to defeating my elder sister. If you wish to test yourself, you should do so against me first. Master, I seriously don't think it's the right time for this. You have to be more serious or else Rymor'll yell at you again. Maybe Ramirez is right, I do need to yell at him. But Veldora's over-optimistic chatter is doing a lot to lighten the mood. Getting too serious will only serve to depress us all. Oh, really? Frey said. Well, you'd better pool your strength so you can resist being taken over. You can't resist Regalia Dominion at all. He can, I chimed in, as long as his will's strong enough. In Veldora's case, the enemy was aiming for a sneak attack when his resistance would be at its lowest, so. Indeed, I am sure I could have repelled it normally, but it was right in the middle of a battle against my sister, you understand. It was a touch difficult to handle. Difficult? You got brainwashed, dude. I wished he wouldn't try to downplay it like that. Rymaru, Dagrel said as I rolled my eyes at Veldora, do you think